Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inclusive Teacher Co podcast. I'm Steph Beatty. I'm an ex-English teacher turned neurodiversity literacy specialist, entrepreneur, and ADHD. So if you've got ADHD, you're also in the right place. I work with educators and parents across the globe to help improve outcomes of children and young people through practical and inclusive strategies that actually work. Today, I want to talk to you about why reading is a gateway skill and why weak literacy, I don't really like that word weak, I'd never use that in front of a child, but why weak literacy puts life chances at risk and what falls apart when kids fall behind. So if you take nothing else from this episode, take this. Reading is not just about the subject of English. Reading is access. It's access to every subject. It's access to exams as much as we bleed and well hate them. It's access to independence, and it is access to life chances. So if you're supporting a child with ADHD that you think has fallen behind, I need you to hear this very, very clearly. This is not about effort or attitude. ADHD, we know, affects attention. Is not a deficit though. Remember, it's variable. It does affect working memory. It can affect processing speed, emotional regulation, and switching tasks. And all of those sit right underneath reading. So today I'm going to make the case for you about why reading is a gateway skill, what the data in the UK is telling us, and why I'm so stubbornly passionate about this. So why am I banging on about reading? Well, guys, you know, if you know me, you follow us on social media, you've heard me on podcasts or lectures or whatever before, you know I'm a former English teacher and literacy specialist, now a neurodiversity consultant, and I'm someone with ADHD who knows exactly what it's like when your brain wants to do the thing, but the wiring is saying, nope, not today. And I've worked with parents who are absolutely terrified that their child is slipping behind, and teachers who are trying their damnedest, they're trying their best in a system that is completely underfunded, completely overloaded. Now, if you haven't already, do go back and check out the episode on the new SEND white paper as well and get my take on that. But I'm going to say something that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And you know what? I make no apologies for this at all. You like it or you lump it, I'm afraid. But when we let a child fall behind in reading, we don't just make school harder, we make life harder. And I die on a lot of hills, guys. All across North Wales, there's little hills with little memorial plaques of me, but this is a hill I'm dying on. Reading is the gateway skill. If they fall behind in the reading, not only will school be harder, but life is going to be harder in general. Reading is how you access the curriculum. It's how you revise. It's how when they get older, they interpret exam questions, even if it's a maths question. It's how they fill in forms. It's how they understand contracts, tenancy agreements, medicine labels and prescriptions, job applications, and the letter that arrives in their post when something's not quite gone right. And that's why it matters. Now, let's have a little think about the UK picture, because the reading warning lights are flashing. So if we zoom out for a second and we look at some research, the National Literacy Trust, amazing, go and check them out. They've been tracking children's reading attitudes for years, and to be honest, the trend is pretty grim. Now, I did a lot of research about this when I was head of literacy in my last school, but I've got some more up-to-date research I'd like to share with you, but I can honestly verify that the trend is absolutely grim. In 2025, only about 1 in 3 children and young people aged 8 to 18 said they enjoy reading in their free time. And about only 1 in 5 said that they read daily. Now, this matters because reading volume matters. If children aren't reading, they aren't practicing. If they're not practicing, their fluency doesn't build. And when we say fluency, we mean the ease and the smoothness of their reading. So if they're not practicing, fluency doesn't build. If fluency doesn't build, comprehension doesn't free up. So comprehension is all about them understanding what they're reading. And if that comprehension doesn't land, every single subject gets harder. And here's another thing that I think should stop us in our tracks. The National Literacy Trust data also shows that children who enjoy reading are far more likely to have stronger reading skills. And that goes without saying, doesn't it? It's common sense. In their 2024 research, twice as many children who enjoyed reading had above average reading skills compared to those who didn't. We know as teachers, honestly, guys, I don't care whether your kids' teachers will tell you this or not. We know as teachers who the readers are. Like we don't care. I think I saw this on NetMums actually. Might have been Mr. P, the ICT teacher. He's brilliant on social media. And I think it was him advertised on NetMums. And it was something like we don't care. We don't know who's been breastfed. We don't know who's got money, but we know who the readers are. Basically, we know who those readers are because not only will their reading comprehension skills be better, the way that they articulate, the way that they perform across the curriculum, readers do better. It's as simple as that. So it goes without saying that twice as many children who enjoyed reading have above average reading skills compared to those who didn't. And this isn't like a cute hobby conversation. This is a skills pipeline. Now let's think about school attainment, for example. So achievement in school. And I'm speaking specifically about England in this podcast right now, but the research does differ from place to place. But in England, the government's own figures show that at the end of Key Stage 2, which is year 6 basically, before they go into secondary. So at the end of Key Stage 2 in 2025, 75% of pupils reached the expected standard in reading. And that sounds pretty decent until we flip it. That means 25%, that's 1 in 4 children, did not meet the expected standard by the end of primary school. And when we look at our SEND children, that gap is absolutely huge. In the same year, the 2024-2025 year of the Key Stage 2 attainment report, pupils on SEN support and those within EHCP, it showed they're far less likely to meet the expected standards. And that is like the national landscape. But now let's add ADHD into the mix. And I'm not even talking about dyslexia or autism or dyscalculia or dyspraxia or Tourette. I'm not even talking about any other co-occurrence that can hinder children. And of course, I always take a strength-based approach, but I'm just thinking about ADHD specifically now. What does the research tell us about ADHD and reading? Well, ADHD is not a reading disorder, but ADHD is a risk factor for reading difficulties because it affects the mental systems that reading depends on. It requires sustained attention, working memory, sequencing, self-monitoring, and that ability to keep going when it's boring or when it's hard. And we know evidence, unfortunately, consistently shows that some children with ADHD have lower academic outcomes on average. They have lower performance on standardized tests, lower grades, more absenteeism, higher rates of retention, more need for additional support, and increased risk of school avoidance, basically. And in the UK-based research that we've got, these ADHD challenges are associated with lower attainment and more school difficulties. I'll pop in the show notes if I remember, because my working memory is not great lately as a perimenopausal ADHD woman. I have got the research. I can drop in the show notes for sure to reference all of this. Now, we know that ADHD is a condition driven by engagement and interest. And I know that some of you on here will say, well, my child's got ADHD and they love reading. Then they're not the children that I'm talking about. It's the ones who struggle with reading in general. So when we zoom on reading a little bit further, some children with ADHD, they can decode the words, but they might struggle with comprehension. And it's not because they're not intelligent, but because comprehension relies on holding ideas in the mind. It relies on connecting information across sentences and building a mental model of what you've read. If you struggle to decode words, you might struggle with the comprehension as well. So the research on reading comprehension in children with ADHD actually highlights these challenges in constructing and recalling meaning. And if you throw dyslexia into that as well, what's going to happen? They'll read, but it won't stick. They'll sound it out, but they can't tell you what it meant. They'll finish the paragraph, and sometimes it can be like it's vanished. And then comes this awful emotional bit. If reading repeatedly makes you feel slow, behind, embarrassed, or stupid, your brain starts to protect you. It will avoid it. It will refuse. It'll kick off. Not because it's naughty. I hate that word. And if you're watching this on a video stream, you'll see I'm doing naughty in inverted commas because I hate that word. But it's because it's defensive. And this is what I say to parents and teachers all the time. Especially, I train a lot of teachers and they say, oh, they refuse to read. I'm like, they're not actually, it's not refusal. It's not a behavior choice. It's self-protection. ADHD is a condition with a high emotional load. So often it's not choice. It's a nervous system protecting itself. Now, the really important part here, in my opinion, for teachers and parents is this. When ADHD and reading challenges coexist, the answer is not to just treat the ADHD and hope the reading improves. A meta-analysis looking at reading interventions for children with or at risk of ADHD, in some research I've read, it concluded that reading interventions should be first line for reading difficulties in this group. So in other words, we support attention and regulation, yes, but we also teach reading directly, explicitly, and consistently. So let's make this painfully practical, guys. When the reading is weak, the school year, especially as they go into secondary, school is going to get heavier and heavier because the curriculum becomes more dense, okay? It becomes more language dense. So by secondary school, it's not like primary where it's just stories and a few texts on a piece of paper, or, I'm not sort of putting down what primary school teachers do, but we know that when it gets to secondary, of course, it's going to become more academically dense, more language dense. It becomes wordy exam questions, dense science texts, history sources, let's think, geography case studies, maths, word problems, revision guides, instructions, mark schemes, feedback and targets. So if a child is a little slower at reading, they're going to take longer to revise, longer to access the question, longer to process what's actually being asked of them. And if they actually have struggles with their working memory as well, okay, so if their working memory is also under strain because of ADHD, they're doing mental gymnastics just to stay in the room with the text. And then we hit GCSE, the stakes go up again, and it's damn hard for them. In fact, I never really thought this when I was a teacher, but the more I know about neurodiversity or a neurodivergent brain in general, the more I think it's cruel that we give them exams when they're going through teenage years. There's actually research indicating that adolescents with ADHD can achieve significantly lower GCSE scores than their peers. Now, I want to be really clear here. This isn't destiny. This is not, oh my God, your child's going to fail. This is just a warning about risk. And I have to say, I'm a very academic person and I've got ADHD. There are some things that some children will have more challenges with over other things. So I didn't have a challenge with reading, with English, with French, with drama, all of those humanities subjects, any academic reading-based subjects, except I couldn't bear science. I couldn't bear maths. I got better at maths when I learned how it made me money because it was related to something in my life. So it's not your child will fail. Risk goes down when support goes up, because reading, the good news is, guys, reading is one of the most trainable skills we have. It responds to practice and it responds to good teaching. Now, let's just think for a second about the adult world. The National Literacy Trust reports that 1 in 6 adults in England, aged 16 to 65, have very poor literacy skills. That's National Literacy Trust research. That is a very sad statistic. That is millions of people at a disadvantage when it comes to work, health, money, and independence. And so when I sound intense about reading, it's because I've watched the long game. Reading is a protective factor. Literacy is a life skill. Now, the real enemy is shame and avoidance. Okay, a lot of parents think enemy is refusal, and it's not. The enemy is shame. Shame makes these children hide. It makes them act up. It makes them look like they don't give a damn. And it makes them reject help because help feels like proof that they're falling behind. It's like, well, this verifies that I'm actually falling behind. So the mission isn't to make them read. It's to protect their dignity, make success repeatable, and rebuild identity as a reader. And yes, build the skill. So this is what I want parents and teachers to do next, okay? If a child has fallen behind with their reading, we don't fix it with longer sessions, more pressure, or bigger consequences. And this can go for every student as well. It's not just students with ADHD, but we can fix it with small steps, consistency, explicit teaching, supportive routines, reading material that actually interests them, and environments at school and at home that reduce friction. I have a whole program on this for parents and educators coming out soon, which I will keep you all updated about, of course. But we do it while making sure they feel safe, not judged. So the culture that you create here is important too. And again, this is why I built Inclusive Teacher Co, because too many parents, too many educators are trying to figure this out alone. Too many teachers are being asked to meet very, very complex needs without enough training or enough time. So if you want some practical strategies, scripts you can use word for word, support that fits family life, you're going to want to join my monthly newsletter. And again, if you want some more monthly support and structured guidance, there is something coming out in the next couple of months. I'm not going to rush this because it has to be appropriate and it has to be good for you guys because that's what you deserve. So you need to be on my newsletter list to find that out. So if you haven't already, you need to subscribe to this podcast because I've got plenty coming out soon that you're going to want to be reading, downloading, watching, lots of free things I'm going to help you with. But I also want you to subscribe to the newsletter. There's over 4,000 parents who get my emails with ADHD-friendly reading and homework strategies, lots of free resources, and also information about upcoming trainings for parents and for educators. So I want you to stop, I want you to go and drink some water, and I want you to remember you're doing better than you think you are. Thanks for listening, guys.